At what point does the brand step in and go, right, we're opening a lawsuit against you because of you've said that this brand fits this car and we're pricing it differently? Like, at what point does that happen?
There are moments in life that simply do not make sense the first time you hear about them. You have to sit with them for a while, think them through, and put them into context before they start to add up. This is one of those moments. Mat Armstrong is a British YouTuber who has spent years doing something that most people would consider almost impossible. He buys wrecked, crashed, and written off supercars worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, and he brings them back from the dead. These are not fixer-upper family cars. These are Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and some of the rarest and most expensive machines ever made. He sources genuine factory parts, which often cost an enormous amount of money and take a long time to track down. He dedicates months of his life to each rebuild, learning how these incredibly complex machines work, solving problems that even professional mechanics sometimes walk away from, and then sharing every single step of the journey with his audience on YouTube. The result is content that has attracted tens of millions of views and built a loyal following of over 5 million subscribers who genuinely love and understand cars. Every rebuild Mat completes is, in effect, a free documentary about the car brand whose vehicle he is restoring. He makes people fall in love with these machines. He teaches audiences to appreciate the engineering. He brings attention to cars that might otherwise fade from public consciousness. And he does all of this at his own expense, with no support from the brands involved. For years, Lamborghini and Ferrari received this gift without ever acknowledging it. No phone calls, no emails, no thank you, no offers of help with parts or access to technical information, no social media acknowledgement, absolute silence, year after year, no matter how many millions of people watched. So it came as an enormous surprise when a package arrived at Mat's workshop one morning, and it was not from Lamborghini or Ferrari. It was not from Bugatti or Porsche or any of the Italian or German giants. It was from Koenigsegg, a small Swedish hypercar company whose cars Mat has never owned, never rebuilt, and never even touched with a single spanner. Nobody expected it. Nobody could have predicted it. And understanding why it happened and what it means requires knowing the full story. Before you can properly appreciate the significance of the Koenigsegg package, you need a clear picture of who Mat Armstrong actually is and what is built, both literally and in terms of his presence online. Because a short description, car rebuilder with a YouTube channel, does not come close to capturing what makes him interesting or why a company like Koenigsegg would take notice. Mat is not a typical automotive content creator. The most common format in automotive YouTube is simple enough. Borrow an expensive car from a dealer or manufacturer, spend a weekend driving it around, film yourself looking impressed, record a review, and give the car back. This format works perfectly well for many creators and many audiences. But it is not what Mat does, and his audience will tell you instantly that it is not even close. What Mat does is fundamentally different. He enters the world of a car that has been damaged beyond what most people think is reparable, and he decides to fix it anyway. These are cars that insurance companies have written off as total losses. Cars that specialist mechanics have looked at and declined to touch. Cars that are missing parts that might not even be in production anymore. And Mat takes them into his workshop, takes them completely apart, figures out how they work, sources the parts, and puts them back together on camera with clear explanations of every step, in a way that his audience can genuinely follow and learn from. This is not a casual process. A single rebuild can take months. It requires deep technical knowledge that covers mechanics, electronics, bodywork, and often highly specialized systems unique to whichever exotic car he is working on. The investment in money, time, and energy is substantial, and yet, through all of this, Mat manages to present the work in a way that feels exciting rather than daunting, educational without being dry, and personal without being self-indulgent. The people who watch him are not passive viewers looking to be entertained for a few minutes. They are enthusiasts who genuinely want to understand how these machines work. They come back to his channel because they trust his knowledge and they share his curiosity. Building that kind of relationship with 5 million people takes years of consistent, high-quality work. Mat Armstrong has done that work, and the brands whose cars he has spent so much time celebrating have, until very recently, not bothered to notice If you want to understand the relationship between Mat Armstrong and the big supercar brands, or more precisely, the absence of any real relationship, the story of the Lamborghini Revenant is the perfect place to start. The Revenant is one of the rarest Lamborghinis ever made. When Lamborghini decided to produce this car, they made just 21 of them. That is not a small production run in the way that some limited editions are small. That is genuinely, historically rare. The kind of number that makes the Revenant feel less like a car you've ever owned and more like an artifact from another world. For most car enthusiasts, even wealthy ones, the Revenant exists only in photographs and in dreams. When Mat announced that he had acquired a damaged Revenant and intended to restore it, the automotive community could barely believe what they were hearing. This was not just another exotic car rebuild. This was one of 21 examples of one of the rarest cars in existence, and someone was going to take it apart and put it back together on camera for anyone with an internet connection to watch. The interest was enormous, and it was completely deserved. The restoration was genuinely difficult. Parts for a car that was made in such small numbers do not sit in warehouses waiting to be ordered. Every component that was needed had to be tracked down through specialist channels, authenticated, and often transported from locations around the world. The cost was significant. The time required was substantial. And every step of this process was captured on camera and shared with Mat's audience, who watched in their millions as this extraordinary car gradually came back to life. Now think about what this meant for the Lamborghini brand. A generation of younger car enthusiasts, people who perhaps never given the Revenant much thought, who might not even have known it existed, were suddenly deeply engaged with this car, this piece of Lamborghini history. They were learning about it, caring about it, and developing a real emotional connection to the Lamborghini name through the process of watching its resurrection. This was brand building of the most authentic and powerful kind, delivered entirely at Mat's own cost, with no support from Lamborghini whatsoever. And Lamborghini's response to all of this effort, skill, and free publicity? Complete silence. No acknowledgement of any kind. No reaching out. No offer to help. No thanks. Just nothing, as if none of it was happening at all. The pattern continued with Ferrari, and the Ferrari situation helps explain something important about the mindset of large, legacy luxury car brands, and why they respond the way they do to creators like Mat. Mat was in the middle of a rebuild of a Ferrari 296 GTB, one of Ferrari's most technologically advanced road cars, a cutting-edge hybrid machine that pushes the boundaries of what a sports car can do. This is not an old or simple car. The 296 GTB combines a turbocharged petrol engine with an electric motor in a hybrid system that requires a very high level of technical understanding to work on. Ferrari's own certified technicians, people who have been specifically trained and equipped to service these vehicles, have reportedly found working on this car genuinely challenging. Mat was doing it on camera with genuine Ferrari OEM parts for millions of people to watch, and Ferrari said nothing. To understand why these brands choose silence over engagement, you have to understand how they think about their identity and their image. Ferrari and Lamborghini are not just car companies. They are luxury brands. And a large part of what they sell is not the physical object of the car, but the feeling that surrounds it. They want their cars to feel like objects from a different and higher world. Things that are beyond the reach of ordinary understanding. Things that carry an almost magical quality simply by existing. This sense of mystery and exclusivity is not accidental. It has been carefully built over many decades through controlled messaging, exclusive events, and very deliberate choices about who gets to be associated with the brand. When an independent creator comes along and takes one of their cars apart in a workshop, explaining every component and showing millions of people exactly how it is put together, something happens that these brands find uncomfortable. The car becomes understandable. It becomes human. The mystery starts to fade, replaced by genuine knowledge. And while genuine knowledge is, in most contexts, a good thing, it is not always what a luxury brand wants to happen to the image they have spent so long building. They are not necessarily hostile to Mat personally. They simply cannot figure out how what he does fits into the story they want to tell about themselves. So they say nothing, and they hope the situation stays quietly out of their way. The tension between independent creators and the big supercar brands had been building quietly for a long time. Many creators and rebuilders have felt the cold shoulder from manufacturers, had encountered closed doors and unanswered emails, had done valuable work that was never acknowledged. But this tension was brought out into the open, loudly and dramatically, by what became known in the automotive community as the Bugatti drama. Bugatti is a brand that takes the concept of exclusivity further than almost any other car manufacturer. They do not simply produce expensive and rare cars and leave it at that. They also try to maintain very tight control over who is allowed to own those cars and what those owners do with them. This approach includes something called a right of first refusal, a mechanism by which Bugatti can step in when an owner wants to sell their car and essentially block the sale if Bugatti does not approve of who is buying it. This is a remarkable level of control for any company to exercise over a product that has already been sold and paid for. It positions Bugatti not just as a car manufacturer, but as a guardian of an exclusive club, with the power to decide who is and is not a worthy member. The drama that unfolded publicly involved a prominent content creator, someone with a large audience and a genuine, deeply held love for these cars, who found themselves blocked and excluded by Bugatti in a situation that highlighted exactly this kind of attitude. The precise details were reported differently in different places, and not every version agreed on every fact. But the central message was consistent and clear. Certain legacy luxury car brands view independent creators and rebuilders not as enthusiastic ambassadors who bring genuine value to the brand, but as potential complications and threats to a carefully managed image. For Mat Armstrong, this story hit close to home. He had been living a quieter, less dramatic version of the same experience for years. He had done everything right. He had been passionate, skilled, respectful of the engineering, and generous with his audience, and he had been ignored by the brands he was celebrating. The Bugatti drama made visible to the whole automotive community something that many creators have been experiencing individually and quietly for a long time. The conversation that followed was passionate and widespread, and right in the middle of all of that noise, a package arrived from Sweden. Ängelholm is a small town in the south of Sweden. If you do not follow the world of hypercars closely, you have probably never heard of it. But to serious car enthusiasts, the name carries significant weight, because Ängelholm is where the Koenigsegg factory is located, a remarkable facility built inside a converted military air base, where one of the most extraordinary car companies in the world quietly goes about its business. The package that arrived at Mat's workshop carried a postmark from this unlikely corner of Scandinavia, and what was inside was already surprising enough before you even got to the most important part. The box contained official Koenigsegg branded merchandise, premium hoodies, t-shirts, and other high-quality items that simply do not exist in any ordinary retail environment. You cannot buy Koenigsegg merchandise on Amazon. You cannot find it in a shop at an airport or a motorway service station. Koenigsegg does not operate retail stores in the way that larger brands do, because they exist in a completely different world from those brands. They build somewhere between 20 and 35 cars per year. To put that into perspective, Toyota produces roughly the same number of vehicles every few seconds. Because of this extreme rarity, Koenigsegg branded merchandise is the kind of thing that ends up in the hands of the very small number of people who actually buy their cars, people who have spent millions of pounds on a hypercar and received a few branded items as part of the ownership experience. It is not the kind of merchandise you stumble across. It is the kind of merchandise that feels genuinely special because it is genuinely rare. The fact that it showed up at Mat's workshop was already remarkable enough. But inside the box, alongside the merchandise, was a detail that changed the whole story. A handwritten note, written by a real person, addressed personally to Mat, not a printed press release, not a standard marketing letter produced by a PR department and sent to a list of creators. A handwritten note, clearly written with care and specific knowledge of who Mat is and what he does. And the content of that note made it even more significant. It did not pitch Mat on a product. It did not propose a sponsorship deal. It asked him to watch some specific videos, particular pieces of content that someone at Koenigsegg had selected and recommended for him. The implication was unmistakable. Someone inside that factory had been watching Mat's videos. They had seen his work. They understood what he does. And they had taken the time to think about what they wanted to say to him and how they wanted to say it. That is not how you send a PR package to someone. That is how you start a real conversation. TO properly appreciate the significance of what Koenigsegg did. You need to understand what kind of company they actually are, because Koenigsegg is unlike almost any other car manufacturer in the world, not just in the cars they produce, but in the way they think and the values they operate by. Most people have heard of Ferrari and Lamborghini. Many people know about Bugatti, but Koenigsegg remains less familiar to the general public. Even though among people who take cars seriously, the brand is considered one of the most genuinely innovative and impressive organizations in the automotive world. Koenigsegg was founded in 1994 by Christian von Koenigsegg, who was 22 years old at the time. He had no formal engineering qualifications, no inherited family connection to the car industry, and no powerful financial backers from within the automotive world. What he had was an almost unreasonably bold ambition to build the fastest car on Earth. Over the 30 years that followed, he and his growing team have done things that far larger and better-funded car companies have never managed. They developed an engine technology called free valve, which replaces a traditional camshaft with an electronically controlled system that gives much greater precision and flexibility. They invented a gearbox called a light-speed transmission, capable of changing gears faster than any other gearbox that has ever existed. They built the Jesco Absolute, a car that is theoretically capable of exceeding 330 miles per hour, a figure that no road car has ever come close to in verified testing. These are not marginal improvements. These are genuine breakthroughs achieved by a small company working in a converted air base in southern Sweden, doing things that vast, wealthy, globally established car companies have not done. What makes Koenigsegg even more distinctive is the culture that Christian von Koenigsegg has built around the company. He is unusually accessible for the leader of a world-famous luxury brand. He does long, technical, detailed interviews where he explains exactly how their engineering works. He gets visibly excited talking about tolerances and thermodynamics in a way that most executives of luxury brands would never dream of doing in public. Koenigsegg's own engineers post video content about how their cars are taken apart and built. The whole organization seems to operate from a belief that understanding creates appreciation, that the more people truly grasp what they have built and how they built it, the more impressed those people will be. This openness and confidence is the foundation of everything that came next. We put Mat Armstrong and Koenigsegg side by side and look at what each of them actually does. The connection between them becomes so obvious, it almost seems strange that it took this long to happen. They are not just compatible. They are built for each other in a way that goes beyond surface-level similarities. Mat Armstrong does not make videos about how a car looks on the outside, or how comfortable the seats are, or how impressive it feels to sit in. Those things might come up occasionally, but they are never the heart of what he does. What Mat does is go inside the car, literally and intellectually. He takes things apart, explains how the systems connect, shows how engineering decisions translate into real-world behavior, and treats every car as a fascinating mechanical puzzle that he wants to understand completely. His audience follows him not because they want to be impressed by expensive things, but because they want to genuinely understand how extraordinary machines work. This means that when Mat covers a car, the content goes places that other automotive content simply does not reach. A standard car review tells you how a car feels. A Mat Armstrong video tells you how a car actually works, what is happening inside the gearbox when you push the accelerator, how the electronics manage the drivetrain, why the engineers made the specific choices they made. It is the difference between watching a magic trick and learning how the trick is done. Now consider what Koenigsegg has to offer a creator with that approach and that audience. Koenigsegg has developed some of the most genuinely innovative and technically interesting automotive engineering in the world. Their free valve technology removes the traditional camshaft from the engine entirely, a revolutionary concept that most people who own cars have no idea exists. Their light-speed transmission works in a way that seems almost physically impossible, shifting gears at speeds that the human nervous system cannot even register. These are not just impressive statistics to mention in passing. They are genuinely fascinating engineering stories that deserve to be explored in depth by someone who has the knowledge to understand them and the audience to appreciate them. When the note in the package pointed Mat toward specific Koenigsegg videos, it was almost certainly directing him toward this engineering content. Koenigsegg was not saying, "Here is our car. Please film yourself looking impressed." They were saying, "Here is how we think and what we have built. We believe you are someone who will actually understand it." That is a much more interesting invitation IT would be too simple and not entirely fair. To look at Koenigsegg's gesture and see it as purely warm and personal with no business thinking behind it at all. The truth is more nuanced and more interesting than that. What Koenigsegg did was simultaneously a genuine human gesture and a very smart business decision. And the fact that it manages to be both at the same time is precisely what makes it so impressive and so effective. Koenigsegg is a business. They need people to know about their brand, to care about it, and to talk about it. This is true of every company that wants to survive and grow, but it is especially challenging for a company in Koenigsegg's position. They build fewer than 40 cars a year. The number of people who will ever own a Koenigsegg is extraordinarily small. You are talking about a few dozen individuals per year globally, and they are almost all multimillionaires or billionaires. The vast majority of people on Earth will never own one of these cars, will never see one in person, and might go their entire lives without ever having a reason to think about the brand at all. This is the central challenge that Koenigsegg faces when it comes to brand awareness. How do you keep a brand alive and exciting in the public imagination when only a tiny number of people will ever directly experience what you make? The answer, in the modern world, is through the passion and reach of people like Mat Armstrong. A well-made video about Koenigsegg's engineering, presented by someone his audience trusts and posted to a channel with millions of engaged subscribers, reaches people in the most authentic way possible. It is not advertising. It is not a press release. It is a genuine human being who clearly knows what he is talking about, exploring something genuinely extraordinary and sharing that exploration with people who actually care. The cost of the package Koenigsegg sent was minimal. A few items of merchandise, a handwritten note, probably less than £100 in total. And in return, they generated thousands of hours of online discussion, widespread social media conversation, and deep curiosity about their brand among an audience of millions of engaged car enthusiasts. The return on that investment is, by any rational measure, extraordinary. But it only works because the gesture was also genuine. People can tell the difference between a brand that is cynically trying to buy goodwill and a brand that actually believes in what it is doing. Koenigsegg clearly falls into the second category, and that is what made the whole thing land so powerfully. The merchandise and the handwritten note were clearly not the end of the story. They were an opening. When you look at the detail of how Koenigsegg reached out, the personal note, the specifically recommended videos, the deliberate timing in the aftermath of the Bugatti controversy, it is obvious that this was a carefully considered move, not a spontaneous one. Someone at Koenigsegg thought about this, planned it, and executed it with a purpose in mind.